Welcome to Senior Center's Something to Talk About. I'm Bainbridge Island. This program is sponsored by Fieldstone Communities, Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers memory care and is constructing assisted and independent living also, and is now accepting residents. They also offer day stay and respite programs. Call 360-689-4314. And I don't have the email in front of me, Reed. Do you happen to have it?
Let me just add. Actually, the phone number has changed.
Oh.
Call 206-594-1010 or go to fieldstonecommunities.com. They'd love to give you a tour.
Yeah, thank you for that. I had the wrong one up. And I would also like to acknowledge that we at the Senior Center Community Center are on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Squamish people, the people of the clear salt water. We honor them and thank them for their hospitality. And today we are listening to Mr. David Harrison with some rich political news, I would say.
Certainly it is, and we'll have some more rich news after it. It's getting to be that season, not just traditional politics, but the full-time job of following down Trump in court, getting what some of us feel is just desserts. And speaking of desserts, Manhattan District Court just fined him $350 million and took him off the board for 3 years. So it's interesting. I want to start, we're going to do our regular 3 topics today, but at Reed's suggestion, we're going to truncate it. And let's tell you a little bit about the 10 steps that I promised my blog followers and will deliver this weekend. But before that, I have a pre, and the pre-3 issues. There's 2 things that the press says constantly that are aggravatingly untrue. One is after the verdict, boy, this is awful. I'm forgetting. I'm going to talk about Joe Biden being forgetful the name of the person who won the big defamation case against Trump. The woman who Trump assaulted.
Eugene Carroll.
Eugene Carroll.
Yeah.
Anyway, after the Eugene Carroll case, reporters would come on and say, it's not clear whether Eugene Carroll will ever collect a sentence. This could be tied up in court for years. That's just not true. First, sometimes people don't collect a cent because the person who they're collecting from doesn't have any money. And so that can happen. Trump has money. And second, there has to be a basis for appeal. When these kinds of things are appealed, either Eugene Carroll or the $350 million fine against Trump, the issue is whether there's reversible error and who they appeal to. In this case, in the fraud case, there's an appeal within the state of New York, and then you could try and fashion some appeal to the Supreme Court, but that would have to be based upon some theory having to do with the deprivation of Donald Trump's constitutional rights. So it is true that on the issue of the fine or the damages, the liability, punitive or not, that sometimes appellate courts will tweak the award, and so big deal. They could make it $200 million. There's a theory for why the award is at that level, but in both Eugene Carroll's case and this case, you will see the money being paid in the not too distant future. The second thing they say, which is equally ridiculous, is every time Trump suffers a legal defeat, some reporter gets on and says, there's no evidence this is having any impact on his support. Well, there is actually evidence. There's half of the Republicans in the country would be deeply troubled if he has a felony conviction. But the reason why Donald Trump is having so much trouble with we'll talk about New Hampshire primary or Iowa caucuses or South Carolina polls all you want. Trump's problem is some of his base is deteriorated. The issue with the court cases is his permanent loss of independent voters, and that showed up in the post polling in New Hampshire that Haley killed him with people who have any sense of independence at all. So it was the press reported that as a big Trump victory, but when you look at the data, it's extremely troublesome as to whether Trump can get any votes outside MAGA votes. So that's our good news. We're going to do 3 topics. As I said, we'll run through them a little bit more quickly than usual because we want to talk about the 10 things we can work on to get elected in November. After Trump won in New Hampshire, I wrote the 1,000 people who get my blog and trying to offer a little comfort because we all climb this wall of worry every day because we could be done with him after June 6th, January 6th, the Insurrection Day. All these folks from Asa Hutchinson to Nikki Haley to Mitch McConnell to Susan Collins and even Kevin McCarthy, Chris Christie, could have stood up, and they didn't because the people they wanted impunity or immunity like Trump was. Yeah. So we've been stuck for years with all sorts of this mutter. You don't like Trump, he's crazy, he's malevolent, he's authoritarian. But at the time when John Thune said in late January after the election that he thought that the election was won by Joe Biden, and that was treated as an immense discovery by the Republican Party that somebody would say that. So they have a loser candidate in Trump, except for some problems that we have. It would be guaranteed, and they deserve that. Our fundamentals are still strong. Let me clear my throat. Our fundamentals are still strong, not least because Joe Biden has a campaign manager named Donald Trump. So witness last week, Joe Biden implodes over special counsel Robert Hur inappropriately calling out Biden for being a forgetful old man, which he is, but it was inappropriate. So Biden goes into a press conference and immediately calls somebody the president of Mexico, who isn't the president of Mexico. And meanwhile, Trump decides 2 days later to say that people who haven't spent 2% of their gross national product, NATO members, on defense, that he would urge Putin to attack them. That was supposed to be a smart-ass comment. Meanwhile, of course, Putin is now being discovered thinking about nuclear weapons in outer space, and he killed Navalny today. So it's not anybody who you want to be a bro with, and that will hurt Trump quite a bit. So that's nice of him. With regard to Biden's ability to serve, 76% of Americans are voters believe that there is a problem. So it doesn't matter whether Robert Hur was a jerk. it matters that 76% are worried about Biden's age, and there are 30 million more voters worried about Biden's age than about Trump's age. So you can have all the NPR stories you want about how weird that is because Trump's only 4 years younger, but it's not weird to Americans because Trump seems like the same doofus that malevolent doofus that he has all along. If you look at Donald Trump, he's not wearing his age in the same way that Joe is. A lot of us on this call know about physiological deterioration over time. Guess what? This is not a theory. There's a reason why nobody over 80 has ever been president. And we are disadvantaged because Joe is the one is president. We're not disadvantaged. He is president. We're disadvantaged. He wants to continue to be president. If that weren't the case, the fact that 61% of Americans are worried about voters are worried about Trump's legal problems would resolve the election right now. So we're got a little bit of a case where we wouldn't mind if a special counsel took a gratuitous slap at Trump, but we'll take great umbrage when a special counsel takes a gratuitous slap at our president. But it does leave Biden campaigning somewhat like this. I've done a great job, but it turns out you think I'm too old to be president. Well, I may be, but consider the other guy who is almost as old as me and is unfit to be president in monumentally more consequential ways. That's not a great campaign theme, but it may be the one that we use. I'm still thinking that Joe Biden might not be the candidate. Lyndon Johnson didn't leave till April. I'm still thinking that Jill, there's some notes in the New York Times about Jill Biden's concerns and about the layers they put around Joe so that he won't get caught in a gaffe and or in looking weak. So I'm not convinced that this is over on either side. I think it's still possible that we'll get neither of them. But in the meantime, we have to figure out how to win whoever our candidate is. 4 months ago, David Brooks wrote a column saying, we should want Joe to hold on tight, that because even with the age issue, he has a built-in advantage against Trump that a new candidate wouldn't have, because a new candidate would need to be learned by the American voters. I just think that's a case where David Brooks is wrong. I think Gretchen Whitmer and whoever would poll better than Biden from the beginning. And I think American people are able within the course of 12 months to discern who the presidential candidate is. Only other thing I'll say about Biden is, remember, even though it was a gratuitous slap, Biden knew that he had those classified documents and had talked about them with his ghostwriter. So there's a huge difference. Trump had 1,000 times more stuff, was chattier about it, and wouldn't give it up, whereas Joe had less stuff, was a little less chatty about it, and would give it up. So that's why George's not being charged. But remember that Robert Hur's characterization as someone who would be hard to charge because they couldn't prove intentionality because of Joe's memory is probably it turned out to be to his advantage, at least on not being. It wouldn't be good for us to have a Joe Biden trial this next 6 months on those documents. So in that sense, it turned out okay. I'm hoping that Joe Biden won't run. Let me stop for 1 second. I'm going to head on to the Congress. So what we're getting from David Harrison on this is that we got a bargain here. our candidate is unpopular because he's old, and we're hoping that the other candidate is going to be more unpopular because he's maniacal and autocratic and not quite as old. And that's the future of America in a nutshell. I like our chances. I just wish we were the first, were the ones running the younger generation. Tom. I can't hear you. Oh, that's because you're muted.
Oh,
Tom, you're muted. Tom, you're muted. There we go.
Okay, yeah, I'm, all right.
Yep,
You can hear me now?
I
yes.
can.
Okay, sorry about that. I think it was very telling that James Carville came out and criticized Biden, Biden's handlers or whatever you want to call them, for not putting him on the having him talk at the Super Bowl. And I think the reason being that Carville was in so much involved with the prior election of Obama. He is definitely an insider, and if he's coming out pushing it, I thought that was significant.
I think it is. And Axelrod before him. It's interesting because those folks are more protected. They don't want a job working for Biden, but it is interesting that, for instance, with Axelrod, I don't know who could pipe Carville down, but with Axelrod, Obama could ask him not to, and he wouldn't. So
Yeah.
I think there is a restlessness. I think all elected officials read Joe Biden's polls, so I think there is a real concern. Somebody was saying I think it was Phil Rockefeller was saying he saw Maria Cantwell at a fundraiser, and he said, Maria, I'm very, very worried about Joe Biden's age. And she said something like, I've heard that from a lot of people. And Phil says, why wouldn't she, say, I agree? I said, you know exactly why she wouldn't say, I agree. There's no percentage of elected officials agreeing with that statement. So that's why I'm sure she wouldn't. Other questions or thoughts, Sheila?
Well,
Yeah, I was concerned about the fact that Robert Kennedy was on the Super Bowl thing.
Yeah, the ad.
Is on what?
The ad, the Kennedy ad. I mean,
Oh, Super Bowl, yeah.
that's a scary situation. I mean,
I'm
I
not
don't
scared. I'm not scared by it at all.
go anywhere, but still,
What is your percentage bet on whether Robert Kennedy is going to be the Democratic nominee? 0.0%. So I'm not worried about it. You see, his cousin called him out. Sergeant Shriver's son called him out. It was very nice. You should look it up if you. I'm not worried about Robert Kennedy at all. I think it's too bad. A lot of us followed his papa and mourned when he died. It's too bad that his son would take such a path.
Yeah, I think that Sheila is insinuating that he might be run as an independent and take votes away.
It's very hard to run as an independent.
Yeah.
Who else is talking about it? Joe Manchin is talking about him and Mitt Romney. So the problem with all these things is if you could have an independent who was fairly decent, who had an equal chance of winning, who had an equal chance of attracting from both sides, it wouldn't horrify me so much. Just all these candidates would push us toward 40% for Trump, 30% for the 35% for Joe, and 25% for the independent. So I don't think it's a good bargain for us.
I just read that Joe Manchin isn't interested.
Yeah, he's not interested. He dropped out. Reed, what do you have to say?
He said this. He talked about Romney yesterday. So be careful what you surmise. Reed.
Yeah, he apparently today's breaking news is he announced he would not seek the White House in 2024.
Right.
People are mobs in the street weeping in distress.
Anyway, I
No,
do,
Joe, please, please. Um,
and I feel like um, Robert Kennedy would be as much a pull against the people who are dissatisfied with Trump, but won't vote for Biden.
well, he's got the anti-vax thing, so that might even work to our advantage if he was on the ballot in the swing state.
Oh, so it was, I think, Ross Douthat, is that how you say his name?
Yeah,
Who commented in the paper recently about what Biden should do is throw it to the convention.
yeah. So if Biden were to do anything, I think it's a bad idea for us to do it then. I mean, I think we could probably survive, but I'd much rather he do it in April.
Agreed.
So on Ukraine, I'll be brief. On Ukraine and the budget, immigration, we're still going to get a deal. Even Mike Johnson said the other day that he's still interested in funding Ukraine. Keep in mind that his senior committee chairs are almost all for Ukraine. He's still got 100 votes for Ukraine funding. He's just trying to leverage it into something having to do with the border, and at the same time trying to deal with Trump blowing up the Senate deal. So the reason why he wants a one-on-one meeting with Biden is he wants to make his demand. And the reason why Biden's not letting him in the door is he's trying to turn up the screws so that whatever that demand is basically in the context of what the Senate already agreed to. He doesn't want some new, fresh definition of how amnesty can be, how asylum can be sought. So that's why that's going on. But keep in mind that Mike Johnson has already decided not to close down the government. Keep in mind that he's already, at least privately, told Mike McCall and other committee chairs that he wants some money for Ukraine because he doesn't want, Mitch McConnell the other day talked about how awful it was that Republicans voted, Robert Taft and Republicans voted against Lend-Lease in 1939 or 1940. They know Joe Biden today said, history will judge you. And Mike Johnson knows that's true. No money, there will be money for Ukraine. It's just how. And so a lot of us have been saying, we want a discharge petition. There's not going to be a big discharge petition because it destroys all of Mike Johnson's leverage. And whoever signed it, we would need 3 Republicans, would get killed even deader than they would get killed for trying to protect Alejandro Mayorkas. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is a suspension of the rules that takes 2/3 of a vote and passes some kind of deal that keeps the government open, funds Ukraine, and tweaks immigration. And that's what Johnson is looking for. And I think that will happen by mid-March. The Europeans just gave a ton of money to Zelensky, but Navalny's death really heightens the pressure on that caucus to not love, to not make Putin the bro that Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks he is. What has the world come to when we have to deal with 100 Republicans kissing Putin's feet? Just amazing. But that's what's going to happen. The budget may be, they're working on it. They have their target numbers, but what happens is cross-cutting amendments on things like diversity that Democrats won't agree to. So that may be another continuing resolution, even though we'll be in March, and we just have to get the budget through September. We could run the whole year on a continuing resolution. But my vote is that we will not shut down Congress. We will not zero out Ukraine, and Mike Johnson will get some kind of little dollop on immigration to make him feel better about it. That's my prediction. And I'll stop there for a minute.
Any questions? Comments?
And then our third issue is Trump in the court. So I think, we talked about this as a group 6 months ago, how all this would sequence. And it's gone pretty well in terms of the sequencing we were hoping, except that Fani Willis down there slipping on the banana peel, because we always had the hope or the possibility that Trump would be moved along on that felony at least as fast as Jack Smith would bring a federal case. But I think because it's a grand jury set of indictments, I don't think that other judge is going to remove the prosecutor, Fani Willis. I don't even know exactly what conflict of interest would be in that case, since she's entitled, she can hire people. I guess it'd be a conflict of interest if the prosecutor she hired, she was hiring them for reasons other than their competence in the court of law. But I think I'm not the only one who thinks that'll be all right. But it's not the big news. The big news is now the Trump's court schedule is getting so full that's really the news he's making every day is what he's appealing, what he's charged with, what he's fined. So as you know, the E.G. Carroll $83 million is a done deal, and there's no obvious reversible error there. So I don't think you're going to have courts hear that on appeal. Meanwhile, today Trump was fined $350 million. And I don't know, I see how that's going to be reversible. And certainly there wouldn't be a constitutional case that would suggest that the U.S. Supreme Court would review it, because there's no immunity claim there anyway. And then all along comes Judge Chuckton, who is eager to schedule Jack Smith's case against Trump on fraud, defrauding the American people. So the good news there is, it was put back in, it was going to be started in March. So from March on, you'd have Mark Meadows and others. All the witnesses are former Trump employees, not all of them, but a lot of them. And they turned state's evidence. So you'd have a courtroom drama from mid-March on, and every day a new disclosure about Trump saying he knew he lost, and about electors in Georgia sneaking into a building at midnight, and all the awful things they did. And that would be nice to have happen in the spring. What will make it happen in April, which is soon enough, is the Supreme Court not hearing on appeal of the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, the DC Appellate Court ruling on immunity. As you know, 2 Obama-appointed judges and 1 Bush-appointed judge nailed that in a 40-page ruling last week, and they said there is no criminal immunity for Trump. And my view is that what it takes for the court to decide to hear that is 4 votes. So John Roberts would have to pick off 2 between Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and maybe Corning Barrett to keep that case from being heard. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to have a 8-to-1 vote or 9-0 vote overturning Colorado's decision on whether Trump could be on the ballot. And then I think they're going to refuse to hear the immunity case, and that will get sailing with Jack Smith and his criminal trial in DC. That's what I think is going to happen. I guess it's possible that the Supreme Court would hear an expedited case and drive the criminal case till summer, or dawdle on purpose, and drive it to next year, which would be awful. But my view is that the court, that Jack Smith knew what he was doing when he asked the court to the federal courts to rule on immunity before he put his case on. The reason that is then he knows what his evidentiary standard is, and he's not spending all his time, if there's limited immunity, trying to do something which is going to get thrown out because Trump had immunity. He establishes instead in advance the level of immunity Trump has, and then he can fashion his case accordingly. That's why I think he did it, and it did cost him not starting the trial in March, but I think he's about to be rewarded. I think the court won't hear the case. Comments, thoughts on that matter? We all follow these things. I'm just the one that gets to express his opinion first.
Anybody?
I would agree that I think the Supreme Court won't take it. I think there's enough of them that aren't going to want to get in it. And the DC Circuit did a really good job on the decision, as we kind of knew they would. So I think that's great. I'm a little annoyed that the New York, hush money trial is going forward, because I feel like that's going to get in the way of things. But there we are.
So I meant to mention that. So that's Alvin Bragg, and that's hush money, and I'm forgetting his second name. Porn star. His name is Porn Star.
Oh, Star, yeah. What was her name?
What's her
Stormy.
name?
Stormy.
Stormy.
Oh,
There we
Stormy
go.
Daniels.
Reed
So
remembered.
she's going to take the stand, and so I think it is annoying because Jack Smith's case is overwhelming, and Alvin Bragg's case, he's got to prove that it was a criminal violation, not to hide that payment. He might be able to do that, but it's not our favorite case. But I think in terms of the way it'll play in the press, it'll be just fine. It's part of the narrative, which happens to be Nikki Haley's narrative too, that he's overwhelmed with chaos. And in some of these cases, he's the defendant. In a criminal case, you don't have the option of zipping in to make a comment. In these criminal cases, he has to be there. He's the defendant. He's not excused.
And with even the vagaries of whether this is a strong case or not, you get Trump on trial. You have America watching this debacle of a president who is trying to be a president, also running for office, also hiring a porn star while his wife was home with the baby.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's all going to go over very well.
Yeah, although, I think we're all recognizing that our favorite case of all well, actually, my favorite case is, no, this is my favorite case. I was going to say the classified documents case, but I think this is a winner, especially since they've got so many states witnesses now. They hardly know what to do with them. So I think they can prove that what they're seeking to prove. Keep in mind the Supreme Court has one case where they're going to narrow what felony is for disrupting a public proceeding, and that's one of the 4 charges against Trump. And I think that will go away for him and for 300 insurgents. So let's spend the rest of our time. What do we got? 20 minutes? Let's spend the rest of our time on what strategies are. If you're into the detail of this, then if you don't get my blog, you should get it this next week. I'll put my email on, or maybe Karen, you could post my email. Sure. Because I'm going to lay out 10 strategies to defeat Trump with links to all sorts of organizations. And I'm not going to give you the links today. I don't have them quite done anyway, but I do want to talk about why we're going to win, how we're going to win, even with Joe being 81. if he's our candidate. First, we all have to decide what we individually are doing. And there are islanders who got so into David Domke and Common Purpose and Common Power, who powered their way all the way to Georgia 2 years ago and rang doorbells for a month. And there are a lot of us who do postcards, which I continue to believe is a way above average thing to do. And then all of us pretty much look in the cookie jar and see if there's any bills left there. And I want to talk about those three things. I think postcard writing depends on the organization, and those of us who write postcards, from postcards to voters or through Swing Left or through Common Power or whoever, need to make sure that we've got a good sponsor, because we want good addresses and we want to do quality cards. There is some research that postcards matter. You're not sitting there thinking that everybody you're sending a postcard to is going to change their vote. But, you know, when you're a candidate, that they tell you as many positive touches as you can get with a voter is as many as you want. You can, as you should have. It's nothing to try and have 16 touches, 20 or so. And a postcard written with heart and skill is one more positive touch. And so I'm for postcards. Thinking about the other two things that we do, if any of us have Sheila.
I just wanted to mention that we do that with that group from Bainbridge here for the postcards. And I was told by a friend of mine who was way high up in Wisconsin, election stuff, that postcards that were sent out there, we did over 10,000 from here, from Kitsap County. And we sent a pile out, and that was a big difference, he said, as far as the Supreme Court justice's person that got the pot of whiskey. And then also Swizzy, who won in Santos's plate. There were piles of postcards that went out from here. I believe that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Me too. And so let's just keep doing it. And it's something that people can do even if they're not going to fly to Georgia. If anybody on this call is interested in personal visits, we're blessed. The place to go is absolutely Common Power, which used to be Common Purpose, Seattle-based. They put teams in the field. They do training. Their theory is our boots, your ground. So they have local partners. You're never going to get caught on a street corner with a list and not know where to go next. And for those of you who are interested at all in that wonderful organization, David Domke is going to speak at the Linwood on March 6th at 5 o'clock. I'm not going to be there because it's my son's 42nd birthday, but Domke's a great speaker, a great American. He's bought a building in Selma, Alabama to do organizing, and he's the real deal if you're wanting a dose of political fervor. And he's definitely where to go if you're looking for a place to do personal campaigning. And then I wanted to say just briefly on money. I hardly ever give money directly to a candidate. I'm afraid I'm going to be, 1/6 of the cost of a midnight radio ad. I'm afraid of getting swept up in the big dollars, but from major donors and unions and PACs and such. I made an exception with Marie Glusenkamp Perez, and I'm glad I did. We pulled her over the top, all of us, and I have been a donor to Kim Schreier. We'll see what we do and how safe she is this time around. But Cindy and I almost always give all our political money to organizers. So some of you know that I'm an addict for Mi Familia Vota, who register Latinos in 7 states. Most recently, they've opened up a new organizing effort in North Carolina. North Carolina has 1 million Latino residents, up from 200,000. And so that's where I go, is organizing money. If you want to go to candidates and you're careful about selection, then there's nobody that is, I think, more careful at the analytics of who has a shot than Swing Left. I would definitely go to in that direction. Reed, what did you post?
Oh,
Oh,
I'm just posting some of the links. So Mi Familia Vota, Common Power.
Oh, great, great. So on to what we've got going for us. If you are, I'll have some of these links myself in my blog, but if you are giving dollars to organizers, give dollars to organizers that are indigenous to their state, and do it in swing states. So Swing Left, the swing states is Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Some people like to think Florida is, but it's not right now. And some people are scared that one of these days we're going to lose Virginia, but Swing Left doesn't agree with that. Swing Left is also interested in selected races in New York and California, because we would have had the House if the New York State Democratic Party had half a brain. How can you lose to George Santos, for God's sakes? Anyway, and some others. Swing Left is interested in Montana because that's where John Tester has to save his Senate seat, and they're interested in Ohio because Sherrod Brown needs to save his Senate seat. Feel a little bit better about that, just because Sherrod Brown is a thing in Ohio that people remember. I want to remind you of 7 reasons why we're going to win, and then it's now 2:14. Then we can let you go. Latinos, people are.
Can I ask a real question, David?
Yes.
I meant to ask it earlier. You haven't touched on Emily Randall or Hillary France.
I know Emily Randall's done great work. I know Derek talked to Hillary about running. I think either of them would be a good congressman. I don't think we're a member of Congress. I don't think we're in danger. I haven't heard who the Republican candidate is. So I would, I'm a big fan of Hillary's. I don't really know Emily, but I know she's done good work in the legislature. I did go to a fundraiser the other day for Dave Upthegrove, who would be Hillary's possible successor as Commissioner of Public Lands. Was impressed by him. He's worked a lot with Phil and with Christine. He certainly would be a protector of the environment. Interestingly, that's where Jamie Herrera Butler is turning up. She's going to run as the Republican candidate for Lands Commissioner. She doesn't have a good environmental record, but she did vote to impeach Donald Trump. So you got to love her for that. Cost her seat. There's a lot of, on Latinos, there's all this gab about how we're not getting as many Latino votes as we once did. And that's true. However, we're getting 64% of the Latino vote. So unless you're in Miami and registering Cuban Americans, you're still good to go. And with Mi Familia Vota is a great way to do it. In 2022, a lot of us gave to them to do Spanish language radio ads in Nevada. And Catherine Cortez Masto beat Laxalt by 8,000 votes. So we can feel good that we were a part of that. Secondly, of course, young people. Yet again, there's articles out there. Young people don't know the difference between Biden and Trump. Really? You think if they don't know that by November, then God save America, let me tell you. But Biden's put $1 billion into, what am I talking about? $600 billion into climate change. I think with Taylor Swift's help and some others, we can register young people all across the swing states, and that we should do that. And that's leg up number 2. Leg up number 3, of course, is the biggest so far, the biggest leg up of all, and that's choice. There are going to be statewide initiatives, it looks like, in Arizona and Nevada, and in Montana, where we need tested to win. Choice voters have been more. We've had more choice voters than Democratic voters every time it's been on the ballot. So that's a big thing for us, and that's number 3. The economy is going to help us more than it's helping us now. So by November, we'll be that much further away from 9% inflation. Joe Biden will be able to say he made 18 million new jobs. So I'm not going to say that our economy in November is going to poll as a plus, but it's going to be more of a plus than it is now. Vulnerable Republicans. There are 14 Republicans, members of Congress in districts that Biden won, and there are only 5 Democratic Congress people, including Perez, in districts that Trump won. So that we can work with in terms of getting back the House. Redistricting, as you remember from one of our sessions, Brett Kavanaugh, hero of the moment, jumped in with Roberts and protected the Voting Rights Act and forced map redrawing in Alabama, South Carolina, Louisiana, Georgia, and we'll pick up 3-4 seats in those states just because of those Supreme Court rulings and forced redrawing. A number of 5 or 6, somewhere in there, Trump, the gift that keeps on giving. There's no chance that he's going to stop being Trump. So that's a good thing. I mean, he's just but he's crazier than he was. He'll say anything and will say anything, loves saying anything, loves the attention. And it's going to be pretty much his campaign. It's going to be those 2-hour monologues that are increasingly disjointed, occasional love of Putin, lies about elections. And so that's as good of it gets. Just be glad that Haley's not going to beat him unless Republicans get some sense, because she would be awful hard to pry independence away from. And then the other thing I wanted to call out, besides economy, choice, young people, Latinos, the economy, redistricting, is the mail vote. Not the mail vote, but the MAIL vote. Some of you saw Phil Kiesling when he was on one of my Zooms, who's leader in the national mail vote movement, and the chart of the last 5 years is just amazing. We now have 30% of Americans who can request that a ballot be automatically mailed to their home with no further documentation, up from 19%. And the number of states that require, number of voters who have to provide an excuse to get a single ballot is down from 40% to 24%. So that's our secret sauce. And it's great that Donald Trump continues to call question and scare Republicans away from doing it. The countless elections where we're 50,000 votes behind and are waiting for the late breaking mail just tells you something. We're getting 60% of those votes, and it's a wonderful thing. And we're getting people who would not otherwise be voting. Of course, that's why they're trying to suppress it. Republicans know that it's our secret sauce. So those are my 7 things that I'll emphasize in my blog. It's a pretty positive picture. It's really, the economy is strong. We're doing the right thing in Ukraine. The voters are with us on choice. I think the really only worrisome element is Joe, bless his soul. You know, when, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, once you got it, you want to keep it. And in Joe's case, it's at our peril. I think the good news is, you know, if he falls over in 2 years, you know, then a vice president will become president. We would do just fine if that's Kamala. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is him falling over in September after we've nominated him. That would be a shitstorm. We do not want that. That would not help us win in November. So that's my big worry.
What did you say about September?
The biggest danger of Joe being as old as he is him having a physical event after we nominate him, but before the election. Comments, thoughts, concerns about any of these things. Today we're celebrating the long arm of justice grabbing Trump by the shoulder and saying, "Whoa, Donald, we got some news for you." And the biggest new news next week or the week after will be the Supreme Court not accepting that case on immunity.
Hey, Breed, what do you want?
Just wanted to say we also have the female vote, which I think, especially with Donald Trump's craziness, helps Joe Biden. And in fact, you know, what I've read is that vote by mail actually doesn't change the electorate that much. The returns don't favor Republicans. It just or Democrats. That vote by mail just embraces more voters.
Okay.
Well, there's competing research on that, but of course we'd like it even if that was if that is or was the case. With regard to women, the reason I didn't say women, it's the counter is true. We're not winning men. And even on the issue of being worried about Trump and felonies, men are felonious men are less worried about that. But I think it is true that we're picking up women. The reason we won by 6 or 7 million votes last time is that women who were with Trump in 2016 fled him in 2020 and stayed fled in 2022. So to that extent, women, even outside of the issue of choice, seem to be have turned away from him. So that's definitely a plus.
I hope there's not too many felonious men.
Yes, well, I agree that I myself have never even been charged, so there, and don't plan to be. I did, however, in honor of Joe Biden, go to Mexico and fall on my face twice on cement and cobblestone. So everybody be careful out there. It turns out you can slip and fall.